So for my final project, I decided to do a search engine tool. I got the idea for this project from our school's academic catalog page. So on the catalog page, there is a long list of degrees and majors, and it's really not user-friendly. It's poor user experience. So I thought I would devise some sort of search engine tool that would filter out the degrees and majors based on certain filters and make it more user-friendly. So for this project, I used ECMAScript, which is also known as JavaScript. I'm really into the web development languages, and I thought I'd, delve deeper into JavaScript and learn more of its syntax. So its object-oriented syntax is very different from other languages, but all the concepts are still there. So first, I'll show a demo of my project. So here we have a list of the degrees, and then we have a keyword filter, and we have a department filter and a format type filter. And so say you were looking for something with the letter C in it, and then you search that up, and the degrees that pop up should belong to that category. But say you don't really care about putting in a keyword filter, you just want to see what's in the department, and so you don't have to put one in, and it should, the degrees, your results should be in the same category. And so I just thought this was better than what the university had, because it's like a really, really long list and it's just poor user experience. Like, you can spend a long time looking for something, and this is just a more efficient way of categorizing the degrees without being too time consuming. In object-oriented programming, the main concept revolves around objects. In other programming languages, objects are better known as classes, but in JavaScript, I use functions to illustrate the same concept. JavaScript also has classes, but I just found that it was easier to illustrate objects with functions. And so under object-oriented programming, there were three main concepts, which is inheritance, polymorphism, and encapsulation, all which JavaScript is capable of demonstrating. As I mentioned earlier, the syntax for OOP in JavaScript is different than other programming languages. In JavaScript, I use a technique called prototypal inheritance, which was first introduced by Douglas Crockford. And so we have our function, which is called inherit prototype, which takes the child and parent object as parameters. What this function basically does is it assigns the constructor prototype of the parent to the child. Therefore, the child inherits the properties of the parent object. Here we have our first object, which is degree. So under degree, we have its data, its name, department, format, and program level. And then we have degree.prototype. So I mentioned prototype in the previous slide, but prototype basically allows you to define methods under this object. And so this object has two methods. So display degrees, which is pretty self-explanatory, and then testing, which I just used to make sure that the right values were getting passed through. So here we have our first object, and then I made a second object called description. And so in this object, it has a function called degree.call, which basically makes another object of degree. So description has the same data as degree, but it doesn't yet inherit its prototype. And so that's why we call the function inherit prototype, so that we can assign the properties of degree to description. And so now we have a description object, and you can basically override the display degree function from the degree object. And so I just put an alert box, so if you click on the View Program Options button, the alert box should pop up. Here we have our third object. So this filter object has a keyword value, department value, and format value as its data. So the idea of encapsulation is that each object is responsible for a specific duty. And so the degrees object was responsible for the creation of each degree and the display of it. And so this specific object is responsible for getting the user's input, filtering out the degrees based on the user's input, and then returning those matches. And so in its prototype, we have two important functions. We have the filter keyword function, which takes the keyword that the user put in. And so I use a regex function just to clean it up a bit and make it easier to compare for matches. And so this function returns any keyword matches. And then in our filter values function, it takes the matches from the keyword and it takes the filters that the user chose, so the department and the format, and it goes through the degrees array again, checks for any matches, and if there are any matches, it pushes it to an array, and then we display the degrees again, but this time with the matches, so it updates the grid of degrees based on these matches. After doing my final project in JavaScript, I just want to say that I really enjoy object-oriented programming because it's a type of programming that you can apply to a lot of other programming languages. Like in JavaScript, even though it was a completely different syntax, the same concept still applied. I also want to say that I really enjoyed this class. I really wish I took this class maybe like during my sophomore year because it really helped me to think of programming in a different way. Before this class, a lot of my projects were very sloppy and very like just a bunch of code vomit, and it was hard to read, hard to understand. But this class also helped me to structure my code better, and it just gave me a different way of thinking about programming because everything is an object and all objects interact with each other. And so yeah, this class just really helped me to structure my code better, to think of programming in a different way, and yeah, I really enjoyed this class.